Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome into the DFS Minute. I'm your host, Michael Rathburn, here from rotocurve.com. It's August 5th, 2015. And quick note on fantasy football, we did have our first really big injury, and that was Arian Foster yesterday with the groin injury. And shout out to my man, Jason Braddock, who I've known for a long time, probably going back about 5 years, who got a break in Houston to start covering the Texans a couple of years ago, and he's done a phenomenal job. He's been able to break some huge stories, and he was out in front of it yesterday with the Foster news. So kudos to him, and going to be meeting up with him in D.C. this weekend for the Football League of Experts, this fantasy football league, which is kind of like the tout wars for fantasy football. So I'm looking forward to that and meeting up with him and a bunch of other people in the industry. Today, we're going to talk about CBS launching daily fantasy sports. Was something that we've kind of hinted at for a while now, that they were going to jump in, and now they have. And they've done it under the SportsLine brand. Now, CBS Sports used to originally be SportsLine.com. CBS Sports bought them. Originally, for a while, it was known as CBS SportsLine. And they've kind of shed the SportsLine brand, but now they've brought it back. And it's not just a DFS product, and we're going to talk about that and why they kind of did what they did and what I think the future is for CBS. So, CBS came out with SportsLine.com, daily fantasy sports, and it is a pick'em game, no salary cap. So right now it's pick'em with tiers. Mostly a cash game site. What I mean by that is not large GPPs, and I don't know if you're really going to see that over there. You're going to see a lot of big 50-50s, a lot of triple ups, a lot of head-to-head stuff, and I think that's kind of the goal that they have in mind, and to kind of be a preferred cash game site for casual players. But with the no rake, and that's something we'll get into. They're not charging any rake, and they're kind of stay away from it. They're gonna still attract people who are grinding out and playing volume, and potentially want to really look for another volume site without having to pay juice or rake. So I think it's a very interesting idea, and something that we'll certainly have to see how it plays out for them. But basically the way they're going to generate revenue is they've got some premium content over there, which is not just daily fantasy sports. They're doing some daily fantasy sports stuff for like FanDuel and DraftKings, some analytics and things like that, and projections. But they're also catering to the sports handicapping market as well, and they're doing that through Stephen O, who was one of the co-founders at AccuScore and did a great job over there. Had a lot of discussions with Stephen about DFS over the last year or so. And glad to see Stephen jump in with CBS and be able to do this. So very interesting to see how this works for them. I think $100 is pretty reasonable. $10 a month, $100 a year for what they're giving away right now, what they're providing. It seems like a great deal. I've talked to a couple of people who have already signed up for it, and they were happy. They did enjoy the layout and the information. So that's how they're going to generate revenue right now. There's going to be other ways they can generate revenue coming down the line, but they don't necessarily need to charge 10% rake, because it's not their main revenue stream. It's just a small piece of what they're doing. And that's really the advantage that sites like CBS and Yahoo have over a FanDuel and over a DraftKings, is that they have, number one, they have an existing player base they can tap into. So their marketing costs are very low. Their player acquisition costs are very low. And it's going to allow them to do things like bigger free rolls, overlay, and no rake or reduced rake. So that's one of the things. And, that's really going to be key, is also with that existing player base, the millions of people that are playing season long that they can market to and bring over, so they can ramp up pretty quickly. And again, like I said, small piece of their revenue. They're not solely relying on rake as means to pay the bills. And that's going to be huge moving forward. I think that's going to be really a big factor in where CBS and Yahoo play in the space. So I've been kind of equating it, or, correlating it over to like the video game industry. When Sony and Microsoft, it was, you had Nintendo and you had Sega, and then you had some other companies. And when Sony decided to jump in and Microsoft decided to jump in, they saw a big market They wanted a piece, and they know they don't have to they don't need it to survive. Where Nintendo and Sega were video game companies, that's what they were solely surviving on. Whereas companies like Sony and Microsoft, can afford to take huge losses early on just to get consoles into homes. It's basically what they did. And I know Microsoft, when Xbox was released, took hundreds of dollars of hits on Xbox units every time they were sold. They were losing hundreds of dollars on every unit. They lost hundreds of millions of dollars early on, but now, they saw this as a long-term play. They had a plan where they felt like in 5 years, if they could turn a profit in the video game industry, it was going to make sense, because the branding and the loyalty and the lifetime value of the customer was so huge that's where they want it to be. And so you're going to see the same thing with CBS and Yahoo. It's still yet to be determined what's going to happen with ESPN. Obviously, we know they have a deal with DraftKings as far as advertising. However, I think they've kind of left the door open, potentially maybe start a baseball season next year or even football season next year, I think, to potentially jump into DFS, which is going to be interesting. So I think keep an eye out for that. The thing with the CBS product is it's got a very it actually looks and feels a lot like Star Street. For guys who don't know, it just kind of jumped into Daily Fantasy Sports. Star Street was like a second tier daily fantasy site, and had a lot of like green and white as far as their colors and their background, kind of similar to Draft Street and its color scheme, but a very slick interface, very had a real good loyal following, and was a great site. But at the time that they were out, much like Daily Joust, it's a small and niche site with great loyalty and great community, but didn't necessarily have the amount of capital and the runway to kind of make it and go long term. So Star Street was acquired by DraftKings. Star Street was known for sharp salaries, flexible rosters, great rewards program, and the Playboy Mansion qualifiers, which originally was their idea. So very innovative site, very forward thinking, and was a great site. I really enjoyed it, and I got to know Jeremy, who ran the site for the most part. It was his baby. I got to know Jeremy over the years, and always enjoyed talking with him. And he always had kind of a visionary approach. So Grant was heavily influenced by Star Street. That's where he first really started playing DFS. Grant Girton, who's the guy that's basically running the Daily Fantasy Sports product at SportsLine. He also ran Fantasy Elite, which was a smaller niche DFS site, and had a lot of good things about it. So you bring Grant in, you bring Stephen O from AccuScore, and then also Josh Johns, who came over from Star Street as well. So you've got some guys over there that I do know, and I do like what they're doing over there. They got a good team at CBS SportsLine, the SportsLine.com product. So that's great. And I think what CBS has done is completely different than what Yahoo's done. CBS has come out and said, these are the faces of SportsLine. This is the handicapping content, and these are the guys that you need to know. This is the DFS side, and these are the guys that you need to know. So they've done a great job as far as putting the names and the faces out there, so everybody knows who the faces are of SportsLine.com. And I really wish that Yahoo would do the same thing. I think that's really key moving forward, especially into the NFL. And I'm not talking about writers being the face of your DFS product. I don't think that's the right thing to do. Not a knock on any of the writers, but they're writers. They're not product guys, and that's a difference. There needs to be some separation. There has been discussion as far as is the DFS market saturated? And it's something I'm going to cover in another DFS minute. But my quick answer to that is no. As long as the companies coming in provide something different. You got to remember they're working with existing player bases. So again, if they were coming in salary cap only, and this was the only revenue stream, that's a different story. I don't think you're going to see anybody jump into the space that is going to have only a revenue stream coming from Daily Fantasy Sports, or somebody that's trying to do just, go up against FanDuel and DraftKings without an existing player base. I don't see that happening right now. Funding is becoming extremely difficult in the space because there's just no market share penetration left. So from that perspective, if the market's not saturated because CBS and Yahoo are coming in and have all the season-long players, and they don't have to rely on the DFS as a main revenue stream. This can strictly be a traffic play, a market penetration, things like that. So again, I'm not worried about that at all. The guys that are out there are saying that the market's saturated, I'm sorry, I disagree completely. Also, people saying whether or not the CBS and Yahoo should have come in a year ago. I completely disagree with that. The market was not where it is a year ago. There were still legal concerns. There are still legal concerns, but the legal concerns a year ago were much different than they are today. Professional sports leagues were not involved as they are today. The market has grown from 40-ish million fantasy players to 57. So all those things combined, I think the timing is perfect for CBS and Yahoo to jump in. And I don't believe this would have worked a year ago. So you've got, billion-dollar valuations, market growth, et cetera. So now it's the perfect time for CBS to jump in. I'm very curious to see, how things play out. Now, I think there's still some interesting things that CBS can do, and I think that snake drafts is going to be one of them. I talked about this in a previous DFS Minute where I talked about pick'ems and snake drafts and their future in DFS. I think that there's an opportunity eventually for CBS and or Yahoo to really capitalize on snake drafts and make it a big thing. Again, they're not relying on DFS as a main revenue stream, so they can afford to take chances and not worry about having to make money with it and just put it out there and see what happens. If it succeeds, then it could be a huge thing, could be a huge boom for DFS. If it doesn't, they can retool it, they can repackage it, and they can move on. So that's my take on the CBS. Hoping to talk to Grant Gerton, who's their head of the product over there. Hopefully talk to him and get him on a State of DFS show in the future and really pick his brain. Really bright guy in the industry, forward-thinking, sharp guy and like-minded, and looking forward to talking to him about that. That's going to wrap it up for this morning's DFS Minute. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And as we always say here at Roto Curve, stay classy DFS.